All right, so here you go. We're gonna talk about evaluating functions. All right, so we're working in Khan Academy here on a couple of different problems. We're gonna do 4 problems together. All right, and we are just going to work on function notation and how do we evaluate functions for a given input. So if you're new to functions, it can be a little intimidating seeing function notation, but a function can be represented just like other things in life. It can be represented with a table. It can be represented with a graph. It can be represented with an equation. On this one, we're talking about evaluating functions when they're being represented as an equation. So this is no different than y equals 5x minus 3. These two things, this right here, this equation, y equals 5x minus 3, it is a function. This equation over here, f of x equals 5x minus 3, it is an equation. They're both equations. They're both functions. The only difference between the two is that this one right here is written in function notation. This one's not. That's the only difference. It has to do with the notation, the way that you write something. It doesn't actually really change much about its value or anything like that. It's just a different notation, a different way that us as mathematicians, we write things. And there is some cool aspects of functions that I'm going to get into here. The one thing I do also want to say is that this thing right here, this f parentheses x thing, it's pronounced f of x. So it's not just fx, it's f of x. And you'll see that in pretty much all of the skills we do with functions. We have this f of x or g of x or h of t or whatever it may be. It's just pronounced f of x. So as you hear me say that, start getting used to hearing that phrase and start using it when you're working on the problems yourself. Here is what we are being asked on this problem. I'll clear off my sketches there. All right, we have f of x equals 5x minus 3. So we're given this equation, and what they want us to do is evaluate the function at f of 5. Evaluate in math means you're going to take an input, and you're going to input it and replace a variable with that number. So in this case, they're saying find f of 5. The number that's in parentheses, that's the input value. So when you see f of 5, what they're really saying in short, it's a lazy way of saying take the 5 and insert it in place of the variable. So you're going to plug it in or substitute it into the equation. So when we take the 5 and we substitute it in for x, we now have 5, not 5x, but 5 times 5 in this case, because that's what the input was, minus 3. The other part of evaluating functions or evaluating expressions in math is that after you substitute a number in place of the variable, you're then expected to simplify that expression or that part of the math down. So we don't want to just leave it like this. We actually want to continue working on the order of operations and simplify this down. So we can do 5 times 5, which is 25, minus 3. And 25 minus 3 is 22. So we end up with an answer of 22 for this problem. And it really is not that hard of math. The math itself is pretty easy. You're just plugging something in, you're substituting a number in place of a variable, and then you're doing stuff like multiplication, subtraction, addition. This is actually kind of like 6th grade like math. The only difference here is we're working on this thing called function notation. Let me go ahead and do 4 more problems. And I need to, I think, go back to evaluate functions right there. Alrighty, let me clear off my screen. All right, we have a new function here. We have the g function. G of r equals 25 minus 3r. And they want us to find and evaluate g of 4. So we're going to take 4. It's our input. We're going to plug it in place of r in the function. So we end up with 25 minus 3. It's no longer an r. In its place, we're going to replace it with 4. 25 minus 3 times 4. So in this case, we have 25 minus 3 times 4 is 12. 25 minus 12 is 13. And that's the answer. It's really that simple. Once you get past this, looking at a new language barrier, then everything else seems to get pretty easy here. Let me go ahead and clear off this one. We'll do 2 more problems together. New function here. We got h of t equals negative 20 plus 11t. And they want us to evaluate h of 11. So they're saying evaluate the h function when 11 is in the input. So we're going to take 11, make it the input by substituting it in place of t in the function up here. We end up with negative 20 plus 11t, but it's no longer t. T's been replaced with the number 11, so it's 11 times 11. We have negative 20. 11 times 11 is 121, so negative 20 plus 121, which ends up equaling 101. 101 is the answer to this problem, so 101, let's check our answer. I'll do one more for you guys, and then I think that's probably pretty self-explanatory from there as far as this particular skill in Khan Academy. Here we go. We got ourselves the g function. G of r equals negative 1 minus 7r. And we're being asked to evaluate g of 6. We're going to take 6 as the input, substitute it in place of r. We end up with negative 1 minus 7 times 6. Follow the order of operations. I'm going to bring down the negative 1 minus the 7 and the 6. That makes 42. And you get an answer of negative 43. So if you do have any struggles, any issues with this, the first thing I would suggest is checking your math calculations. There's a good chance that you may have followed the order of operations incorrectly. The first part's really not too difficult. You're just replacing a letter with a number. That's something that you've been doing probably since 5th or 6th grade. So if you are getting these wrong, there's a very good chance that it's your math calculations. Don't be afraid to use a calculator before you insert your answer to just check to make sure, did I enter that incorrectly? And I think you guys should be fine if you do that. What I'm going to do is end this video, and we're going to move on to another skill. Check out that video.